I'm out getting some exercise again, taking a walk, and this is a nice little scenery here. It's a creek, and there's so much mystery down there. Some really big trees, big rocks. Looks like some briar patches. Looks really interesting just to go down there and walk. So I'm going to talk some astrology again today. And this is Moon Talk, Moon Code, and the moon is in Leo. And again, the creek looks really nice. I'm going to keep it walking this way. The sun is very beautiful. I would say moving, but this isn't like a cow field. It's more like should be some wild horses around here. It's a big, pretty hill right here. Some big boulders. And there in the background is a high school. It's called Patriots. And if you break the word Patriots down, it stands for Pat Riots. Riots meaning something to get enraged about. Hot topic. And Pat meaning half female, half masculine, the feminine and the male together with the androgyny of the Aquarian complexity. And because of its confusion, it creates quite a stir amongst the black and white polarity. So I'll talk more about that later. However, the moon is in Leo, and I'm really feeling this regal quality. It's quite the vibrancy, because Leo is an artistic sign. Fixed fire, and fire is all about desire and passion. And Leo, it loves the design of the scene. And it loves to be in the scene and look outlandish. And it likes to have all of the attention, as it should. So, continuing with Moon Talk, the astrological weather. Moon is in Leo, and speaking of another artistic element, mutable water, there's Mercury and Mars in the sign of Pisces, again surrounding the North Node. So there, the energy is amped up. Mars is giving the initiative energy for mental stimulation, for an artistic outlet. So again, this is all about having the mental capacity to sum up the info, Mercury, in the delusionment of Pisces, which delusion is all about a vision, an artistic vibe, in order to create. So that's where a lot of the energy is being utilized with Mars and Pisces. So it doesn't have a clear direction, though. That's why it's kind of staying in the artistic realm of the mind. And Mercury, the polarity of the sign of Pisces, is able to use the info to quickly assimilate artistic expressions. And again, pause for a second and just take in the beautiful scenery, because this is how the process of cardinal fire, which refers to Aries and the planet of Mars, initiates the visual quality of the sign of Pisces to create, stimulating the senses, with Uranus still in Taurus that rules the senses. It doesn't need a lot to work off from. So a little can go a long ways regarding artistry. So I just want to talk about it's a community off in the distance, a neighborhood, so forth and so on. I just want to talk about the sign of Aquarius and Pluto that is still at the beginning phase of Aquarius is basically in an intense manner purging all of the facts, the raw truth, out in the open about ancestry, which Uranus at the tail end of the sign of Taurus, fixed Earth, is really ancestry, because the bloodline, so-called bloodline, which is just information from my psyche to be projected outward, mixing and matching imagery to create form. So the relatability is incest. Everyone is not ancestral separate, but are incest, referring to the moon in Leo, kingdom, tight niche, so-called family, bloodline, where everyone is related oddly through my psyche, which is Pluto in Aquarius, and with the assortment of Uranus that is traveling or has traveled through the sign of Taurus, has enlightened not only myself, but is the so-called collective vibe of what's going on. That's why I'm talking about it. There was a movie called Bleeders, and this guy had a blue eye and a brown eye, and he went to this castle. It was a horror flick, and everyone there, the royal family, was incest, and their offspring had all kinds of illnesses and diseases, and all of the offspring that had physical impairments that looked like freaks were all locked up in the basement. So again, everyone is related oddly, ancestry. That's why everyone looks so oddly familiar. And it just stems from a quote unquote apple tree, like that was in my great-grandmother's yard growing up, hence A for Apple, the Mac computer, and apple referring to man, or the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. So again, this is some odd information that I'm sharing, and Aquarius is all about oddness. And the sign of Taurus, this is an odd place to be after the realization of how small this world really is, but how big it is according to the eugenics factor of my conscience, my psyche, a quote-unquote computer brain, where all things are formed. So that's where the ancestry stems from, my brain. So I can talk about, well, Venus and Chiron are still in Aries, and Jupiter is halfway through the sign of Cancer, Cancer representing the family, and this not only interest, but this topic of where did man originate is becoming addicting, with Jupiter traveling through the sign of Cancer. And I am going to talk about Black Moon Lilith, because here I am. And Black Moon Lilith could be referred to the black screen, which is chaos completely. That is controlled chaos from pixel to pixel in order to project with great precision. So Black Moon Lilith is squaring, which is a 90-degree hard angle to the nodes. That is in the sign of Pisces and Virgo, the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. So, I'm going to pause for a second and take in the environment, the scene, because there's some pedestrians, so forth and so on. And I'm going to walk around this way because I want to have some better focus, because this is what happens with the magnetism of the sign of Pluto traveling through Aquarius and Uranus traveling through the sign of Taurus, which are both fixed signs, and myself being the medium, the center. All of the moving objects gravitate towards me like you wouldn't even believe. So anyways, just gathering my thoughts. Let me pause for a second. The view is really great. Beautiful field, nice big boulders and mountains. The moon, cable lines. That is all just symbolic of electricity that I make possible because I'm electric. Oogie boogie oogie. And going to walk this way. I'm just pausing because it's a dry area out here and there's a lot of rattlesnakes. And it's evening time, so they like to lay on the cold sand. Again, really pretty. There's a huge electric company off in the distance that I will speak of later. And it's a pretty neat scene to see all of the different electric equipment that's all compressed together. So again, talking more about Black Moon Lilith, which is the furthest point away from the nodes. And pause again, taking in the scene. It's very serene. You can see the moon up in the sky. The skies are blue, all kinds of chemtrails, which creates the Wi-Fi effect. Eyes to the sky for the Wi-Fi and all the metallics. Which is heavy metals. Again, very pretty. Very pretty. So the square going on with Black Moon Lilith and the nodes is all of immutable quality. And mutable air, speaking of eyes to the sky, is the magic effect, the magician card of the internet and Wi-Fi connection, switchboard operator. And Black Moon Lilith is squaring this energy, or excuse me, the nodes, because this is all about exposure. Black Moon Lilith is disguised by chaos, the mutable quality. And it's using Wi-Fi, or the idea of the signals that is constant, stimulating the senses to stay secretive in a not only destructive manner, but constructive, because it relates to Pluto, and Pluto is an Aquarius, trying to destruct to construct. So again, in seeing how this is transformed from chaos, but when something's so drastically transformed that's unrecognizable, it's hard to contain and keep it a secret. That's why I'm talking about this. And it's a tough energy That's why it's a hard angle, it's a square. And the mutable quality is just creating this vibe of constantly on the go. It constantly wants to not only travel, which is another mutable quality of the sign of Sagittarius, which is mutable fire, constantly wants to spread and fly. It doesn't want to station. So this is why the containment of Black Moon Lilith enjoys the darkness, because through the darkness it spreads without being noticed. And it's hard to pinpoint. So this is the energetic vibe going on. And again, I'm taking a beautiful walk. There's a lot of ants on this path. But I enjoy this canyon. Looks really nice. And again, this is mood code. Mood for moon, which is all about the moods and the temperaments of each vibe or flavor. According to the astrological wheel, the circle of life. So again, let me pause. Steep peaks and valleys around here. Big blue skies. There's a lot of holes around here. There's a lot of rodents and there's a lot of reptiles. A lot of shrubbery. A lot of wheat. Separating the wheat from the shaft, which is the rapture, which is Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius representing humanity, which is something else that I need to bring up, which is the hot topic of the ceremonial act of death and rebirth, which is all about Pluto and the sign of Leo, where the moon is transiting, and Jupiter transiting Cancer. I can bring up the act because it's all dramatic play. Leo, drama, play, act. Enjoys this fixed quality of life and death, which is Scorpio, because this is all a ritual. It's all about recycling imagery. And there is no real life or death. It is just an act. Because, again, I transcend on when I'm done with my existence. And until then, everything is just displayed to me in the astrological wheel. So, this act of death is really comical to me because, again, there's different rituals corresponding to the act of death or funerals, which, you break the word funeral down, it starts off with the letters F-U-N, which is fun. And then you can piece the rest together. It's not that hard. Etymology. A spell, which is the enchantment of words, symbols, symbolism, because I'm a symboholic. Let me pause again. There's cute mountains, big chemtrails. You can see the moon. There's a little peak down here. There's a cute little tree or a big bush, one or the other. But anyways, the ritual of death or funeral homes is to pay homage or celebrating a celebratory act of one's so-called life or accomplishments of living, which is just an act. And you can get cremated. You can be infused with embalming fluid and get dolled up. And you can be viewed and awake and then buried, have a plot with the tombstone. And there's other different ways of this death ritualistic act, which is just really bogus. And is just corresponding to the 8th house and the 4th house of the astrological wheel. And isn't it funny how the year I was born was 1984? 8th house, where my moon and Pluto conjunct. Again, Pluto 4 degrees and the moon 8 degrees, 84. And then with Saturn there at the 3rd decanate of my 8th house. So anyways, this is all taking place in the sign of Scorpio. So let me pause again. Beautiful peak scene. Big boulders. Big peak. And there's a lot of music going on in the background. It's house parties, but again, humanity is trying to be on me like white on rice because I'm creator, and with all of the energy that is concentrated in the astrological wheel, this is a timeline where all of the truth is coming out and everything is trying to stay concealed because, again, everything is an act. So that would mean all of these objects haven't accomplished anything because I'm automating them. So, of course, that would piss this quote-unquote story off, which is just a manipulative timeline. But anyhow, that's a lot to take in. Very deep dive. Eyes to the sky. Beautiful big boulder. Peak. The sun setting. Beautiful mountains in the distance. Very mountainous. There's a lot to be built around here. A lot of big boulders and rocks. Reminding me of that horror flick or movie sequels of tremors. And again, there's so much to discuss. However, just about covered everything for Moon Talk. Because again, the moon is transiting through the sign of Leo, fixed fire, and all of the other energies are pretty constant, but switch up with the lunarian vibe. That's on a month-to-month basis. So again, some big rocks, nice big field. There was some bitter melons here last year, which they'll be uncovered more towards the summer. And speaking of bitter melons, you know, like down by the bay where the watermelon grow. And watermelon, that's really apparent, and there's a plethora during the month of July, which represents Cancer, and which is the summertime. And watermelon referring to roots, Cancer, and bitter, because the kingdom, Leo, which I create, is an automation that I resurrect Scorpio from scene to scene, which is the third house, community, kingdom. And of course, with the age of truth, so to say, I can experience a lot of bitterness. That's why this timeline thinks, or excuse me, the ricochet effect of the polarity of black and white is trying to make it seem like I was set up to be robotized so I can be operated like machinery, to be controlled, because I was going to find out the truth anyways, that I was creator and I created all this, and when I'm done, I'm going to transcend and all this will be deleted. Blast off. But anyways, some construction going on down there. Cute path. And of course, with Taurus representing the body, fixed earth, and Uranus transiting through the sign of Taurus. This is all revealed to me because I willed it to me. Because that's all I ever concentrated on, really, was why was I here? And what was the point to all this? And why was I in this body and not in any other body? And where did I originate? And where is my destination? So it's a lot, again, to take in. And it seems really harsh, but it's not really harsh. And I'm not taking anything personal. There would be no point in that. So again, let me pause. Beautiful plants. A lot of high peaks, big boulders, chemtrails, eye to the sky. You can see the moon up there. Whatever phase it's in the sign of Leo. And I always look good when the moon is in Leo. really brings out that regal quality, that richness of what it is to be alive. So again, this is Moon Talk, the astrological weather, moon code, mood rings, so forth and so on. And until next time, blessed be.